What's up, YouTube? Thanks for coming back to another video. I've got a jam-packed tutorial for you guys today, so make sure you watch it to the end to pick up all the little things that I do. This is a tutorial on how to use FreeCAD, not necessarily how to design a drone frame. So with that in mind, I've developed this tutorial in a way that I will introduce you to a lot of the different features that are available. How you use them is up to you. As we go through and you start learning more, you'll start developing your own technique and style, and that's perfectly okay. What I'm going to try and do is just teach you some little tricks and best practices so you can really develop your skills in a way that is going to help you get better and really enjoy 3D modeling. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is change something in the preferences that's going to make it a little bit easier to select our vertices. We're going to come here to Edit, Preferences, and we're going to select the Display tab here and come to Marker Size. Yours is probably set on default to 5 point. I've already changed mine to 11 point. That's the one that I prefer, but I would recommend from 11 to 15. It's just going to make things a lot easier as we're trying to pull up geometry from our master sketch. So once you've selected the size you want, press Apply and OK. And then we're going to do some housekeeping over here on the left side in our model tree. As we start creating our model and our assembly with different parts, this is going to blow up, and it's going to be kind of hard to come back and change something when we don't know what everything is. So first thing we'll do is change the name of our body here by right-clicking, selecting Rename, and we're going to name this Bottom Plate. And then we're going to right-click our sketch, and we're going to rename that sketch our Master Sketch. And now we can get started on our actual bottom plate. We'll do that by selecting the sketch, Create New Sketch. But first, make sure your bottom plate is selected. You don't want to go back into your master sketch. So we'll select our bottom plate, create new sketch, and we'll start that sketch on the XY plane. Now we have to reference our master sketch, and we do that by coming up here and create a linked edge to an external geometry. We'll select that, and we'll start pulling up the vertices of our sketch here. Now we're not going to do every single one. We're just going to do half of it, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to show you another feature that's really cool. It makes things really simple if you use it correctly. So once we have all of those points selected, we will left click to exit the external tool, and we will grab our polyline tool and start connecting all of our vertices. And you can see that because, real quick, you saw it turn green and then it didn't turn green. That's because I missed one of these constraints here. So if you do that, just click both vertices and come up here to your coincident constraint. And you can see that it's fully defined or fully constrained. And that's because our master sketch is fully constrained. And it's just referencing that sketch. So we actually don't have to come in and put in a bunch of dimensions and stuff now. On this one, make sure you get both the horizontal and the fix onto constraint. You can see them pop up next to my mouse there. Same thing with this one. We're going to get the fix onto and vertical. And then when we come over here and we get the coincident and horizontal, you can see that it's a fully constrained sketch. The next thing we're going to do is pull up these circles that reference our standoff holes. So grab the link external geometry tool and select all of these circles here. And then we're going to put another concentric circle in the center of each one. So grab your circle sketching tool and make sure that you get that coincident constraint on the inside of each one of those. And you can see that we're not fully constrained anymore. We've got 4 degrees of freedom. That's because each one of these has a different dimension or a different diameter. So if we select all 4 of them and make them equals with the equals constraint, you can see that drops to 1. And then we're going to constrain the diameter of one of them to 3 millimeters for our 3 millimeter bolts. Now that's completely done. We're going to go ahead and close our sketch here. and we're going to create the first solid part, and we'll do that by selecting this sketch that we just created and coming up here to the pad tool. And you can see that we've created half of our bottom plate. It looks a little thick, so let's come here and give it a 3 millimeter dimension, and we're going to go ahead and leave it sticking out of the top. We don't want it to be reversed because that's where we're going to draw the arms for our drone that are going to come out the bottom. So we will leave it normal coming up out of the sketch plane, and we're going to press OK. Now we can quickly create the second half of our frame here. We select our pad feature that we just created and come up here to the mirror tool. It's got a red dotted line with a yellow little triangle and a blue triangle. And once we click that, you can see that it automatically created the second half. That's because the algorithm automatically chose the vertical sketch axis, which is, straight up and down. So that's this as our mirror plane. If it were to select a different one, sometimes you might have to play with it a little bit. But when we have the right plane selected that we want to mirror across, you can see we get an exact image of the other half. And we'll select OK. And let's make sure we stay on top of our housekeeping. So over here, this pad feature, it's got these sub features that we use to create the pad, and you can tell because it's got this arrow here, and then these come out underneath it. So we will right click it. We're going to rename this our body. Now we can create the holes for our arms and for our flight controller. But you can see now that this piece is in the way of our master sketch, we can't see it anymore. So let's come here to the mirrored feature that we just created and press the space bar. And that will actually hide everything that has been created up to that point. So if we press the space bar, we can bring it back and we can hide it. So let's go ahead and hide that with the space bar. Sorry, I'm saying it a few times, but I don't want anybody to miss it because it could get frustrating. So yeah, now let's create a new sketch. We'll come here, create a new sketch, and put it on the XY plane. And now we are going to pull up this geometry for our holes. We'll use the external geometry tool, and we'll go ahead and grab these 3 vertices. That's all we're going to grab. And I'm going to show you another cool tool to get it to the other parts. So once we've pulled up that geometry, let's create holes by using the circle tool, putting them coincident on each one of those points. And then we will select all 3 holes and make them equal in size with the equals constraint. And then we will dimension the diameter of a single one to 3 millimeters. Now you can see that it's fully defined. We'll go ahead and close this here. We're going to select our mirrored function and press spacebar to bring our body back. And then we will select our sketch and come here to the pocket tool. It's this little blue square with the red cutout in the center. And we will pocket it. But you can see it didn't do anything. That's because it's creating a pocket into the plane. We need to create a pocket out of the plane by clicking this reverse button. Once reversed is checked, you can see we've got our 3 holes. And it's just good practice we know that these are going to be through holes, so you come here and select through all. So that just means no matter what we change the diameter the thickness of our bottom plate, we know that those holes will always go all the way through. We can select OK. And now we need to get these 3 to these 3 other places here. And we could use the mirror tool, and we could mirror it this way, and we could mirror it down, but then we wouldn't be able to get it to this side. So what we can do is select our pocket, come up here to this circular pattern of yellow with the 1 blue, and this is create a polar pattern. And when we create that, you can see it's just mirrored across kind of horizontally or diagonally to this other side. But over here, you can see we've got our angle is 360 degrees and our occurrences are 2. So let's go ahead and increase the occurrences. You can see if I increase it by 1, we get another one to pop out, and they're equally spaced throughout 360 degrees. But we actually want 4, so we'll increase that one more. and you can see now on 360 degrees, they've been equally kind of distributed around that circle. If we wanted to make 4 in a 180 degree range, then we could change this to 180. And you can see it's got a polar pattern now that's going 180 degrees around this way. But we want this to be 360. So it's evenly spaced throughout our whole bottom plate here. And then we will press OK. So now that we've created a new feature and we've finished adding all of the additional features to it, let's do some housekeeping. On our pocket here, we will right click and rename it. I'm going to rename this Flight Controller and Arm. And once that's done, we're almost done with our bottom plate. There's just one more quick thing I want to show you. That's how we're going to get these nice rounded edges on these corners. And it's important to note that this tool, it's the fillet tool, it should be the last feature that you add to your part. And that's because there's something in the coding that, if you come back in and you have to edit things, you're going to have to redo your fillets. For some reason, the fillets break no matter what whenever you're making a model and you make changes to it. So not a huge deal, but it could get frustrating if you didn't know that. So let's go ahead and let's select this edge right here, and let's use the fillet tool. You can see we've got a nice little fillet with a 1 millimeter radius. Let's increase this to 4 millimeters. And then let's also select this one. So to do that, we have to come here in the tasks pane and select add reference. And then you'll see this one disappears, but that's all right. So just click this one. And you can see as soon as you click that one, you get both fillets. So let's do it to this end too. Let's click add reference and add this corner, and then add reference and add this corner. You can add them to all the corners if you want. You can change different sizes. If you want to do a fillet of a different size, you would have to click OK. All of these are 4 millimeters, so we click OK. And then let's say I wanted to do a larger one here. So I would select this corner, and we're going to come to fillet. And then let's give this an 8 millimeter fillet. We'll just press 8, or you can use the arrows. And then let's add this one to it. Let's come over here, add reference, select this corner, and you can see we've got some nice round inner edges there. We'll press OK. So now we've finished our bottom plate and we can get started on our top plate. This is going to actually be very, very easy. So what we'll do here is over here in our model tree, so this is our first part, and we're actually going to have multiple parts. And so what I want you to do is come up here and use this tool right here. It says create a new part and make it active. So I think it misuses the word part. Should be make a new assembly. So when we select that, we've got this assembly. It says it's a part, but what this really is this tells FreeCAD that you've got multiple parts that are going to be put together in an assembly, not just a single body. So what we want to do is we want to grab our bottom plate and we want to drag it into our part. And so now we have our part, and we're going to rename this. We'll rename this to Drone Frame Assembly. And you can see that now our bottom plate is actually a child of our drone frame assembly. So now to create our top plate, I want you to select the bottom plate, right click it, click copy, and then we're going to select our drone frame assembly. We're going to right click and we're going to paste it. But you can see that it actually didn't fall out as a child of our drone frame assembly. So it's very important here that you grab this part that we just created and drag it into our assembly and make it a child of our drone frame assembly. Now let's do some housekeeping here and rename our bottom plate as top plate. But where is it? You can't see it. And that's because it's been copied into the exact same place as our bottom plate. So if we select our top plate and now come down here into our properties, I think yours will probably all be condensed like this, but let's expand placement. And then we're going to come here to position. We'll expand the position. And the Z-axis, you can see over here, I don't know if it's a little too small, but you might be able to see on your computer, the Z-axis is what's going straight up and down. So we want our top plate now to come up 25 millimeters or 30 millimeters. So we'll take that little Z dimension and let's make that 30 millimeters. And now you can see we've got two different parts inside of our assembly. They're both exactly the same, but that's going to be really easy to come back and edit. So now let's make some quick edits to our top plate and make it look more like a top plate and not a bottom plate. We can do that by expanding our top plate part here. And this is why we've been keeping good track of, our features and doing our housekeeping over here. So we're going to come to the body and then we're going to come to the sketch for the body and we'll double click that. Now we can make some quick edits here. The first thing we're going to do is send all of these to construction lines. And basically what that means is that FreeCAD, when you're adding a pad or a pocket feature, these will actually, the construction lines won't be recognized by the function. So we can click all four of those lines, and up here where it's got a red square and a blue dotted square, we click that and you can see they turned blue. If we were just to delete these, we would open up degrees of freedom and then we'd have to start dimensioning. I found that it's just easier to send these lines to construction instead of deleting them. So once those are construction lines, we're actually going to send this one up here to a construction line as well. And then we're going to draw a line from here to here. So we'll use our line tool and we'll connect these two vertices. And so now we've got kind of the shape that our top plate's going to be, but we need to make this cutout still. So let's grab our reference external geometry and let's pull out this vertice from the corner of our camera hole. And then we're going to draw a line, use our polyline tool, and we'll connect these two vertices. And we're going to come over here and draw another line. And then the last thing we need to do is get rid of this, but we can't send this line to construction because we need this edge still. So what we can actually do is come and trim this line, and you're going to see that that's going to open up a degree of freedom. And that's why we try to send to construction as much as possible. So come up here and grab the trim tool. It's got the little T with the dotted line coming out the top. And if we just click on this line, it's going to know exactly where to trim it. But now we have to fix this. We have to fix this point onto our axis because we opened up a degree of freedom. So we'll click those two and click the fix onto constraint. And now you can see when we close out here that nothing has changed. Now the reason nothing's changed is because of our fillet features. Remember how I told you that the fillets are going to break if you try to edit anything? Well, that's exactly what's happened, and it's keeping our model from updating. So that's a quick fix. All we got to do is just come here and delete these fillets. And you can see once we delete both of them, that the shape that we just created is going to pop up. So the last thing we need to do here is correct this polar pattern. So we actually don't need the polar pattern. The polar pattern is broken, but it's actually part of our flight controller and arm pocket. So since we don't need those on the top plate, we can actually just delete those two and all of the features that were created for them. So let's go ahead and yes, we're going to create this or delete that, excuse me. We're going to delete the sketch that was associated with it, and we're going to delete the polar pattern. Now what we can do is add some features to the top plate here. I'm going to show you how to use another cool feature, but first, FreeCAD has left us in our sketching workbench. If you're not on the part design workbench, let's go ahead and navigate back to the part design workbench. And then we'll go back into our model tab here so we can see our model tree. And then let's clean up our workspace a little bit. I'm going to hide everything except for what I'm working on. So I'm going to hide the bottom plate. And you can see that the master sketch and the bottom plate are hidden now. And I'm going to go ahead and select the last feature on my top plate here and press spacebar. So now all we're left with is the master sketch. Now I want to add a new sketch to my top plate. Make sure your top plate is what is active, and create a new sketch. And we're going to select the XY plane and click OK. So I want to add some slots for the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the external geometry of my flight controller holes here. And then once that's done, I'm going to come here and use the slot tool. And I'm going to select one vertice and I'm going to drag over. Now don't select this vertice. It's going to do something weird and just make a line. But just kind of select outside here. And then you can put this point coincident onto this point here by using the coincident constraint. And you can see we've got 1 degree of freedom, and that's the radius of this slot. So let's go ahead and we will constrain the radius, or you can constrain diameter, whichever one you prefer. We'll do the diameter and we'll give it 3 millimeter constraint and press OK. So now let's click our last feature in our top plate. Press the spacebar to bring it back. We'll select the sketch we just created, and we're going to come up here to the pocket function. And again, the same thing is happening. It's going into the plane instead of up and out of the plane. So let's just select reversed here. And we will make this through all and press OK. Now what we can do is make a linear pattern of this slot. And to do that, we will select the pocket feature that we used to create it. And we'll come here and select the linear pattern tool. It's between the mirrored feature and the polar pattern. So we'll use this linear tool, or this linear function. And there's a few things we got to do. So by default, it's using the horizontal sketch axis. So that's this axis here. We want it to be using the vertical sketch axis. So we'll come here and select vertical sketch axis. And then you can say it's way up here now. So what we want to do is make it a little shorter. We'll make 30 millimeters our length. Oops, don't press enter. And then our occurrences, we can increase the number of occurrences we have, and it'll evenly space them between the first one and 30 millimeters. So really quick, cool way to make some linear features. And the last thing we're going to do to our top plate is add some fillets. So make sure your top plate is selected. Or your top plate is active, and come and select the edge here. And we will use the fillet tool. And then let's add some references here. So we will add reference, select this corner, add reference, select this corner here. Sometimes they can get a little tricky. Add reference, let's select this corner, add this corner. We'll add this corner, and then we'll come back and add these two corners. And let's make these a little bit bigger. You'll see if we try to make them 4, it actually doesn't make them 4, because then these two lines would actually be the same line. And FreeCAD has a little bit of an issue with that. So we could make these 3.9. And they would be pretty close to 4, which is what our bottom plate is. But then you can see if we click OK. And we've got our nice top plate with nice rounded corners. It was super easy to create it from our bottom plate. I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. Please hit that like and subscribe if you did. I've got some more tutorials coming. Again, I feel like if you want to make some changes to this bottom and top plate, you already have the tools. You can. Feel free. I'd love to see if you guys have some cool changes or modifications to this frame. Let me know in the comments what you guys have done to change it up and make it your own. I'll see you in the next one, guys.